Good afternoon. Welcome to this session on the national commitment to the European Science Cloud. So the point we want to address is to start a reflection on the benefit of investments in data infrastructure, data services, and to discuss how the different countries are committing to the EOSC, also from a financial perspective. So the outlook by exploiting the new EOSC observatory tool, the outlook of the current situation is that there is a commitment by large part of the European member and associate countries to adopt and enforce open science and the European Open Science Cloud related policies as structural decisions or legal decisions of the states, of the countries. But it's smaller, the number of the countries that have open science specific financial instruments in place, so the so-called earmarked funds as a specific budget line in the government administration. Most countries, in fact, contribute via their data infrastructure, research infrastructure funding, national research program funding that imply open science practices that have to respect and obey to rules about opening of the outcoming data and deposit of data in repositories and so on. So this is quite advanced, but specific financial instruments are less common. And nevertheless, if again looking at the results of the observatory, if we put together the colored countries in the three pictures where already some explicit dedicated financial instruments are in place or they are in progress, so there is already some action ongoing or are being planned, so there is already a political decision to go along this line, you see that put together the three things, you start populating a reasonable part of the European Union and nearby associated countries. So with this short introduction, I would like to invite one after the other the important contributors to this session. And first one is Katrin Weisten-Bjordi from the Norwegian Directorate of Higher Education and Skill from Norway. She is a special advisor for research services and she's heading work on open science in the Directorate. She worked on strategic planning, both for open publishing and fair research data in cooperation with the Research Council of Norway and research performing institutions. Please.
Thank you. So, thank you for the possibility of talking a little bit. So, Norway is definitely committed to EOSC. This presentation is a little bit more about is more indirectly about this and about a job that was done this year, started last year, where we had a working group that was tasked from the ministry to give advice on the organization and funding of research infrastructures. So the leader of the group was professor, vice rector at the University of Tromsø, who during the period was moved to being the director at the Norwegian Defence Research Establishment. So that's a thing that we've done in all these kinds of working group we make sure that a very well-respected researcher is head of the group. I worked in the secretariat for this study together with people from the Research Council of Norway. So what I want to show you a little bit is some of the work that we did on benefits. So the end result of the work was to give advice on how to organize and fund research infrastructures. But on the way to that, we decided within the group that it's a crucial point to actually be very explicit about the benefits that we can reap from investing in those infrastructures. Because all of us in the group were just, yes, we need to do this. We know the benefits. We know it's something we want to do, something we need to do. But not everybody. All the policymakers, we really need to be explicit about it. So what I'm about to show is nothing new to most of you. So it's just as an illustration. And of course, COVID was the first one. We don't need to say anything more about COVID. It just showed all the ministry, all the deans, everyone, that this is a good thing. Having collected data over a long time is a good thing. But what was interesting was it also showed us where we did not have enough money. And the interest from the ministries or the government was such, when they saw this example of the benefits, they immediately started 2 new expert groups that have now given advice on what are the next steps to be even better prepared for the next disaster. The next one is on protein modeling, where we've also just, the people who work with it know this is important, but to be very explicit, to show to the ministry or the ministries that using AI, we have been collecting data for a while. Finding the structure of one single protein has taken a year and maybe 100,000 euro. Using AI on the data that was collected, suddenly like this, you had all the human proteins. So to show the power of the possibilities when you do have data. Another thing, to just show that we know that great values are lost because of the lack of reproducibility in medical research. What we pointed down to was that the best possible result of this is that the research is of little or no use. The worst possible result is that we actually put the uncontrolled and unconfirmed research into clinical use. Next one is just an example of, there's Statistics Norway. They have collected data for many, many, many years. Normally you have to apply manually to get data. You can wait for months or even years before you get the right set of data. They created an infrastructure that gives you access even to sensitive data, because you don't see the data, you work on an aggregated level. So you can work directly, no application process, no waiting time. You can access the data, you can use it, and if you actually find out that aggregated data is not enough, I need to go down and work on the data itself, at least you can use that tool to find out exactly which set of data you need. And then your order will be much more precise, and you arrive at your results much quicker. Same goes for what's called satellittdata.no, which is also, a lot of these are international cooperations. Loads of data available. I used to work with this satellite data in the 90s. It took days or weeks before the data was available for processing. Now it takes a few tens of minutes. And which means you can actually do live warnings. You can do live updates of the situation. Another example of artificial intelligence is a small Norwegian startup called DigiFarm that helps farmers or agricultural companies to plan their activities. Help them do optimized fertilizing, help them do automated reporting. There's a lot of time, and there's a lot of time that is they no longer need to do the manual work, and also they get better yields. So it's been hugely successful. They're now going internationally. And last, we talk a lot about the STEM areas. There's a very interesting project at the University of Oslo where in the Teacher Education Institute, one of the professors there has really spent a lot of time creating sensible metadata for videos from the classroom. And she has, since she's done that, there's no, as we all know, there's no incentive for doing that kind of work because it doesn't create publications, but it does create new theses, master theses, PhDs. So now they are slowly beginning to see that, okay, even if the data itself is not so easily shareable, if we put sensible, good metadata on it, we can make that openly available and we can share. So they've taken this further on and created a group of all the different disciplines within the University of Oslo that are dealing with qualitative data and trying to build a culture for creating metadata and creating benefits. So that was it from my part.
Please sit where you prefer, the color you like best. Thank you very much for this presentation. Now, I invite the audience to take note of questions, because at the end we may have some time and it's more efficient to have more questions and more answers than to go one by one. So I would like to move on, if I can manage with this device. Doesn't seem to. Okay, so now we have Andrea Herdegen from the Federal Ministry of Education and Research. Please, Andrea, come in. You describe yourself, as we don't have the full bio, but she is a member of the EOSC steering board.
Okay, thank you very much. I think enough has been said. I'm within the ministry. I'm also responsible for research data, and for within this unit we are responsible for both EOSC and the NFDI. And I've been asked to present on this, which I do. But I want to add another point and speak a little wider about our national commitments. And I say national. I mean government, direct government funds. I want to start a little with a strategic background that we have for our work on several levels, because I think it's essential to hook our activities somewhere in political papers. One is the data strategy of the federal government, which was published in 2021. It's broad strategy about data, but it contains relevant pieces. We want to make German data infrastructures effective and sustainable. We want to enhance innovative and responsible use of data, develop data competency, make public data better accessible. And within this strategy, there are also references to EOSC, for example, and NFDI. On a next level, we have a strategic paper, a so-called action plan on research data, which breaks it down to activities of the ministry. It's also a part of the implementation of the strategy and of the broader data strategy. And this action plan bundles measures for the following 3 goals. Sorry, it's only in German there, but the basic points are covered on the slide as well. We want to improve data sovereignty and data infrastructures. We want to encourage data-based innovations, and we consider data skills as an important part of this work. And with this, I come to the concrete task of creating an NFDI. This project is actually much older, much older. It has started at the same time as the EOSC. We had a first recommendation from our Council for Information Infrastructures in 2016. So this was when the EOSC papers started as well. And then we have a legal basis for the setup of this national research data infrastructure as well. On this slide, we have the basic facts. They have been stated over and over again. So main information is that we set up to 30 consortia. We have a funding that is up to 19 million euro per year, and the legal basis is for 10 years for the setup process, and it also includes other aspects. One of the things that is already mentioned in this legal basis is that we want to have a close cooperation with European and international research data infrastructures. So there again, there is a hook for combining the 2 initiatives. As a next slide, I have tried to bring on the screen an overview of where we stand at the moment and how the NFDI is developed. It's the upper 3 arrows in light blue. They show how the consortia joined the NFDI. We had 3 rounds of consortia. The first 9 consortia started their work in October 2020. The names, some of them are speaking for themselves, and others need a bit of explanation, but it's just, well, you can find more information online if you want to. We had another 10 consortia that started their work in October 2021, and last set of 7+1 consortia, I come back to this, the decision to fund or to choose these 8 consortia was taken at the beginning of this month. So, and they will start their work in spring 2023. So we are now, we can say we have completed the setup, but the projects have not all started working. In the last round, there is one consortium which is called Base for NFDI, which is a cross-cutting initiatives and which aims to provide basic services which are relevant for all other disciplinary consortia. So what is interesting in terms of the price tag, the financial contribution that we make to EOSC through NFDI is we had in our monitoring exercise, we were asked how much did you spend in the year 2020. So you see there was only very little money, well, a low two-digit figure in millions flowing at that point, and we will, 2024 will be the first year in which we have the full sum of 90 million per year. So in 2025, we will have an evaluation where we stand, a structural evaluation, what NFDI is doing. So my next picture is, well, tries to give an overview of what the network actually encompasses. This is with 27 consortia, it covers all disciplines. Again, sorry for leaving it in German there. We have the consortia, or the members of the consortia come from all 16 Länder. All kinds of types of institutions are involved in the work of creating an NFDI, and it's just to give you a figure, we have also created this NFDI association as a roof over the consortia, and this NFDI association has now more than 200 members. So it's a broad coverage of the German science landscape. In terms of, well, what does NFDI do? Within the consortia, there are activities on introducing or furthering research data management, long-term data preservation, accessibility, fair data production, discussion on standards, and while all this happens mainly within the consortia, there are also cross-cutting issues which are dealt with in sections of the NFDI. So this is the place for the different consortia or members of the consortia to discuss with each other cross-cutting issues, such as common infrastructure, ethical, legal, or social aspects, metadata, terminologies and provenance, and training and education. Just to give examples, those are the four sections that exist right now. There are also discussions on the setting up another section which deals with industry relations. So what, as I said, NFDI is one major contribution we have to EOSC. We bring in the broad community, and there is a huge overlap in aims and activities between NFDI and EOSC. NFDI, the association, is also our mandated organization in the EOSC association, and we will have a national tripartite event next week in which we try to bring the communities even closer together. And as I said, we do more. I need 1 minute more. We also do a lot of now, starting from last year, but actually this year, measures to foster data literacy, and this is also relevant for the EOSC. What is interesting also is that we use means from the Resilience and Recovery Fund for those actions, and it's actually about pushing the boundaries. We want to include our universities of applied science in research data management and data sharing. We want to address young scientists and push the borders to less data intensive communities. And last point, we want to establish data competence centers. And all these measures start now. And with this, thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. So we move on to the next, if I manage to have the first slide of the next presentation. I think, oh, it's me. Okay. No, it's Volker. It's Volker. So please. Volker Beckmann he will speak about the financial commitment to EOSC in France from the French Ministry. And his formation in astrophysics and has been working at the University of Hamburg. And then again, astrophysics and space science in Switzerland and NASA. And he has lectured at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. And then became a researcher at the CNRS in France in 2009. And he was a scientific director for computing and data science in the N2P3, is the French National Institute for Particle, Astroparticle, and Nuclear Physics. And since September 2020, Volker has been responsible for the implementation of the European Open Science Cloud in France at the Ministry of Higher Education and Research. And since February 22, he is the co-chair of the steering board. Please, Volker.
Thank you, Giorgio. So I want to talk today a bit how we contribute in France at national level to EOSC. So as I say, always transitions like making open science a new normal need investment. So it first needs a national commitment when actions, so we have a national commitment when actions respond to real needs and they correspond to the overall strategy we have in our country. Then we need national policies which provide a frame for the RPOs and RFOs, and they should take this up and create their own policies. And third, then, these policies should lead to real investment. So I will go through these 3 points. So the first one, the EOS corresponds very well with our general transition, digital transition, which of course is not only a French but a European undertaking. So you can, for example, see the speech by our president in 2020 to the digital sector. And then we have a number of policies in place in France to support the implementation of open science and of EOS. So first we have a law which helps us a lot because it gives a very wide frame. It's not very detailed, but in principle it says everything which is funded by public research has to be open. So that's not only true for the data, but also for publications. So that's a very interesting law which forces, in principle, open access to all publications. Then there's a law, and then there's the practice, which is not always so straightforward. Then we have a French open science policy, which addresses open access, change in research assessment, open data, open software, but also the EOSC. And we have a specific policy of data algorithms and source code sources. So you find then the links once we have the slides online, you can go there. And so this is not only at the national level, but we have this then also implemented in the institutional level. So we have a lot of policies by RPOs and RFOs. I just link a few here of the largest one, and then of course the universities. We have quite a lot of universities, so definitely when I check definitely the large universities, they have open science policies, and we, in the context of our steering board monitoring, we will then evaluate what about all the other universities and research performing activities. So most of them have action plans and investment in place, so that's usually it's human resources, right? We need human resources in this domain mainly. And all this feeds then back also to the national level, because when universities and research organizations have this in place and they invest, they come back to us and say, well, we do our part, so what is your support then for us? So how does this look from the funding point of view? And we discussed today the monitoring this morning at the national level, and we said it should be a very open system. So I'm going to disclose how we computed, how much we contributed to the EOSC in 2020. So as a context, France is of course strongly committed to EOSC and open science in general. You have seen this, for example, on Tuesday morning by the presentation by Cyril Moulin. There's a strong coordination of the national EOSC initiative at the ministry level, but we don't have EOSC earmarked funding. We don't have a funding budget where it's written, this is for EOSC. I think we are not alone there. It's rather, I think it's really the exception to have earmarked funding for EOSC. But we have significant EOSC relevant funding. So how does this look in the computation we did for France? So we have an open science budget through the National Research Agency, which is 5 million euros in 21. It's 3 million then in the following years. We have a large investment into EOSC relevant infrastructures. And in this call of this, we call it Equipex Plus, in this call it was explicitly written, you have to support the EOSC, and what are you going to do actually in order to support the EOSC, and how is this relevant for the EOSC? So in this call, we had a total investment of 142 million euros. That starts, the investment started then in 21, so as our survey we did at the steering board level asked for the investment in 2020, that's not yet included in this number, resulting in a number of projects, either in infrastructures or in information relevant projects, and some I found already a link to the project page, and for others we still have to wait a bit. So that's a main investment there, and I think that's a typical way of how countries support the development of EOSC, not with saying, okay, this is for EOSC, but saying, well, we create infrastructures, we support projects which contribute to open science and which provide services and provide elements of the Web of Fair Data and services. So and then we have a number of research programs with relevant open science EOSC aspect, which totaled to 116 million euros in 2020. So there we counted, okay, let's assume very pessimistic that 2% of that goes into EOSC, and the same for the contributions. And here only the cash-only contributions to the ESFRI and international infrastructures in 2020, which is 500 million euros. And of that, we counted also 2% because the ESFRIs, they make a large effort of fairization of their data, of contributing services to the communities. So this ends up then as an EOSC relevant budget for 2020 of 13 million euros. For 21, I didn't do the numbers yet, but looking at the Equipex, so there's something above 20 million, I would say, for the following survey. So just to summarize, so EOSC is part of the digital transition in Europe and in France. Open science is a national strategy in France. It's a law. We have policies and we have an action plan. So I think there we are covered. Research performing and funding organizations have open science policies and action plans in place, at least as far as I've evaluated so far. And EOSC relevant investment at national level from our ministry is usually done through ANR, through the National Research Funding Agency. And the relevant investment into EOSC in France was 30 million in 2020, probably something above 20 million for 21. And then we take it from there and hope to increase our investment further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Volker. If you want, you can have a seat here or wherever you prefer. You'll be addressed with questions that the audience is certainly taking note of. for the later discussion. So I briefly present myself. I'm here to represent Italy in the EOSC steering board. I'm a professor of physics in Milano, actually teaching, and I also am active as researcher and responsible of research infrastructure in the domain of the nanoscience. I am probably more known in this context as a former exponent of ESFRI. I've been in ESFRI for 10 years, and I was chair in 2016, 2018. How is Italy contributing, or how is Italy committed to the EOSC? Well, I must say that Italy has done something important in 22, and that is to make a law about a national plan for open science. This has been prepared through 3 different governments, spanning across all the possible configuration of the Italian parliament. And so I think it's probably robust. And nevertheless, it does establish all the principles that are well understood by this community. Integration of Italian fair data with the EOSC is explicitly mentioned. Promote funding for fair by design solutions, so developing technologies for automated fair data production, promote collaboration on all research objects, develop skills and new technical staff professionalities for research data management. So the little box is in Italian. Italian is also one of the official languages of the Union, and it just says what I summarize. So PNSE is Piano Nazionale Scienza Aperta, open science. Instruments that are already in place are, for example, the ECDI. The ECDI is the Italian Computing and Data Infrastructure. Unlike what was presented for the case of Germany, this is a bottom-up initiative that nevertheless intercepts all the major research performing organization producing data, managing data, or dealing with data, or transferring data. So the Italian network of high-speed data communication is a building partner in there. And this is important because it has the role of coordinating, or at least having a high degree, high level of transparency and communication on the different policies adopted at institutional level, and to become a sort of a portal for interacting with the government on the matter of EOSC and data-related initiatives. It also has some instruments that are available for the researchers, like the Competence Center that has also started operating several months ago concerning data management plans, assistance for that, and all what is typically expected to be done in a Competence Center. ECDI is also the mandated organization for Italy in the EOSC Association, but 27 more Italian members representing research infrastructures based in Italy, research performing organizations, and universities are part of the association, which gives one particular angle to estimate commitment. Then financial resources. Well, again, we have done an exercise similar to what Volker has described for France. So there are activities that are supported by the Ministry of University and Research that are data intensive, so to say. So activities out of which a share of several percent in some cases ranging to 8-10%, in some other cases ranging to 3-5% of the total budget that is allocated to these initiatives. So there are, in 21, Italy has assigned 580 million to research activities of international relevance. This is largely research infrastructure and e-infrastructures. They are almost all operated by national research performing organizations. So a fraction of these we can interpret as a running support to research data technology and openness. 2022 was an important year because Italy has been assigned a budget for recovery and resilience, and a fraction of this budget, for 1.5 giga euro, has been dedicated to research infrastructures, all of which are, of course, open science oriented and obeying the national plan. Of course, they will adopt open science practices and deal consequently with the data. Some of these, so this concerns all the funded projects, national projects, and out of these, some are more directly aimed at the data domain. So there is a So Big Data, which is also a European collaboration, Terabit. The first one is run by CNR, the second by INFN, Academic Big Data. And this together makes a 61 million investment for 23-25. And then in the social and cultural innovation sector, I also picked up a couple of projects that are clearly oriented as a core business to the open science, so it's fostering open science and social science research, and humanities and cultural heritage Italian open science cloud, for a total of another 74 million euros again for the period 22-25. So, and then a big object, it's not in the research infrastructure, but it's again in the recovery plan, is the Italian National Center for Supercomputing. This is a big addition to the operation at Technopolo of Bologna, where already the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecast and the Cineca supercomputing machines are located. And this new ICSC, high performance computing, big data and quantum computing project aims to build a distributed cross-organizational infrastructure supporting scientific research, the production, and the production world in innovation and digitizing the country. And again, here there is an important investment of 320 million euro for 23-25. So again, in terms of a direct earmarked budget line in the ministry that says EOSC, we are not there yet. Maybe we will come, at least for the National Plan of Open Science. There is work in progress and an expectation to have a clearly dedicated budget. But I think the whole effort, the whole commitment of Italy to EOSC has to be understood in this broader range of instruments. So I thank you, and I like to, thanks. I like to call Lukasz Lewak, and your bio is so long that it's so thin in the screen. So Lukasz has joined the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport of Czechia in 2009 after completing his studies in history, Latin American studies at the Charles University. Before he was appointed the director of Department for Research and Development in 2014, He had been in charge of developing bilateral collaboration of Czechia in research and development and participation of Czechia in the Artemis and ENIAC joint technology initiatives during the 7th framework program. Since 2014, Lukáš served as a director of Department for Research and Development, which consists of the Unit for Research Infrastructure and the Unit for European Research Area. His duty and responsibilities comprise policy making, public funding of research infrastructure, Czech membership in international organization and ERIC, and formulation and implementation of the national strategy of Czechia for international cooperation in research and development. As of 2014, Lukáš Levák has been a Czech delegate to ERAC and serves as delegate to ESFRI. Again, Lukáš represents Czech Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports at many platforms, such as the ERA Forum, LI ERIC General Assembly, and the ESS, European Spallation Source ERIC Council. In 2022, he's been the lead coordinator of the research policy agenda of the Czech presidency of the Council of the EU, and we must be grateful to you, thankful for being part of the reason why we're all here today. Please.
Thank you very much, Giorgio, for this long introduction. To cut the long story short, well, I'm director of R&D department at the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports in Czechia, which is responsible for research infrastructures, policymaking and public funding. Even though we don't have words like science and research in the title of the ministry, we are the largest and leading national policymaker. And among other things, we are also taking care of the implementation of the European Open Science Cloud in Czechia. So, as it has been mentioned, in the cases of all the other countries, the implementation of EOSC is an integral part of the research infrastructure policymaking in Czechia as well. So on this slide, you may see that there is a couple major initiatives how to manage this research infrastructure policymaking, either at the level of national-based facilities or international facilities. The research infrastructure policy covers also operating the Czech National License Center to provide open access to electronic information on R&D. And last but not least, it's a new pillar within the policymaking on RI. It's the National Infrastructure for Scientific Data. Quite new initiative which emerged recently, mainly over 2021 and 2022. And as in the cases of all the other countries, we put our emphasis on the stakeholders' engagement and coordination of all the relevant actors, be it higher education institutions, public research institutes, of course, also policymakers at the level of ministries and agencies, or the Council for Research, Development and Innovation, which is the advisory board to the Czech government. So all these stakeholders have created, under the leadership and supervision by our ministry, a high-level coordination platform already at the beginning of 2021. And this platform is a really high-level platform which decides how to proceed with the implementation at the national level. So all the plans, the architecture or the design of the architecture of EOSC CZEST, the implementation plans, as well as the funding instruments which will be used to build the national data infrastructure are debated at this platform. This platform already prepared a high-level policy document, which is called Architecture of the EOSC Implementation in Czechia. Actually, it's like 4 or 5 pager, so nothing really long, rather brief, concise document outlining all the major principles, how to approach the EOSC in the Czech environment, how to design the architecture, how to implement it, and how how to engage with all the relevant stakeholders. This 5-pager was designed in mid-2021, and since that, we are trying to put the implementation plan in place and take concrete measures, concrete actions so that the EOSC initiative in Czechia becomes real. We are linking the architecture design, implementation plan, and funding instruments together. These are the three key pillars we are focusing on. Because the coordination of all the relevant stakeholders is quite a complex task for anyone, we are establishing the so-called EOSC Secretariat. It's a really coordination platform at the operational level, which is managed by the E-Infra CZ. E-Infra CZ is the Czech National E-Infrastructure Consortium, which is composed of 3 main pillars, providing all the necessary ICT services in Czechia, including high-performance computing, including experimental computing and data storage, and of course, last but not least, the National Research and Education Network. So all these components are glued together in Czechia within this E-Infra CZ national consortium, and this consortium is not only operating the EOSC CZ Secretariat, but it's also the mandated organization of Czechia to the EOSC Association at the European level. Below this EOSC Secretariat, or maybe at the same layer, there are numerous working groups that focus on dealing with particular cross-cutting and thematic issues concerning the EOSC implementation. These platforms we have created jointly with E-Infra CZ, they are inclusive, so they are open for anyone. Any stakeholder who is interested in the EOSC implementation may take part, may participate in designing the architecture, be it the cross-cutting area or the thematic clusters. These thematic clusters, which you may see on the slide, well, I forgot. Yeah, I forgot to change the slide. So these thematic clusters that you may see on the slide, they are a result of a bottom-up and top-down approach. In most of the cases, they stem from the activities that are already developed by research infrastructures. So they are good practice examples, and they are the leaders of the EOSC implementation in Czechia. And these working platforms and EOSC CZ Secretariat are designing how to build the national data infrastructure. As you can see, we have 4 key pillars of the design. There's going to be the national metadata directory, which is truly the key component because it should interact directly with all the other components of the data infrastructure. There will also be national repository platform, which is an initiative to foster the capacity building and also to provide the basic and common data infrastructure services to all the relevant users. There will be thematic repositories. As I said, they stem from the research infrastructures, which are focused on the data operations and data handling. And of course, last but not least, the very important is education and training. Yeah, I can see I have 3 minutes left. And I promise to be short because I have last slide in my PowerPoint. Well, we saw quite interesting plans how to invest in the EOSC implementation at the European level. We heard the good practice examples of numerous countries. Czechia has also some particular approach. We have earmarked a particular budget allocation for EOSC implementation, and we are going to use the European cohesion policy funds to pump the money into the system. So basically, to cut the long story short, if I do the simple math, yearly we are investing like like 120 million euro into research infrastructures in their operation costs, including national-based facilities and international ones. And at the same time, we have a budgetary allocation for the investment costs, which will reach in the upcoming 7-year period the level of 240 million. And in parallel, we are earmarking a particle budget for the EOSC implementation, which shall equal something like 120 million euros. So altogether, these are investments in the research infrastructure in Czechia. They cover also our participation in international RI facilities. And here you may see just an overview of the gradual course which will start triggering the money into the system. So the first call to build the EOSC Secretariat and National Metadata Directory has been already launched this year and is up and running. And there will be second call to build the National Repository Platform next year with a very significant budgetary allocation. The third call will focus on the thematic clusters. So we will strengthen the already existing data repositories of the research infrastructures that they operate, and we will also invest fresh money to meet the needs that will newly emerge within the research community. And we are also considering a fourth call somewhere in 2024, 2025. This call is under consideration, but after the initial stage of the EOSC implementation, there might be a space for uptake and upskilling. So basically, this is in a nutshell what I wanted to share with you. Of course, I remain at your disposal for any further questions. And thank you very much on behalf of the Czech presidency, and I hope you are enjoying your stay in Prague, although Prague doesn't seem so nice as on this slide these days in real. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think I should take a seat as well. And I think we can open the discussion. I may start with some questions, but then I invite all of the audience to intervene. From your presentation, I took note of the fact that you say that the Oslo University has a special action on transversal metadata. Did I understand it right?
They have a special action on qualitative data, so disciplines working with qualitative data, so videos, pictures, interviews, non-quantitative data.
But
across the whole university.
Okay, because I don't know if anybody wants to pick up this thing, that there may be actors developing very advanced solutions for the data management, the fair data technology, but that are oriented because they are research performing organization oriented to some domains. But there may be other actors, like some generalistic research performing organization or the universities that maybe are readier to attack the transversal, the possibility that at least at the metadata level, broad catalogs will exist that will solicitate the curiosity of the researchers. Does anybody want? Please, Volker, you have a.
Yes, sure. I mean, as we were asked to present the national commitment, of course, we don't include here what the EOSC association members put in there. We have very large research performing organizations which have budgets, significant budgets, and a significant part of their budget they put into fairization of data and of services. So that's of course not included in the numbers we show here, because we didn't want to have too much overlap there, I think.
Okay, then I have a question to Andrea. You described the policy of the federal ministry, and then you said that within this NFDI, you are starting consortia managing sectorial domains, if I understood well. So how do these map, or are consistent with the idea of the European Commission to start sectorial data spaces?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think you said in your presentation that you have a bottom-up initiative. I always describe what we do as a bottom-up initiative as well, though we have the legal basis there to create an NFDI. So basically what the consortia do is define within their own discipline, broad discipline, what they want to do, how they want to develop standards and everything they need. They are not linked directly to any of the European data spaces, but well, we can increase awareness and we can increase cooperation in some way there. It's really a bottom-up way of starting these this cooperation, creating a network, and then we have the overarching cross-cutting sections and services through one this new consortium base for NFDI and also through the sections. That's how we approach it, but on the whole, I would say what can be intensified is the cooperation with the European level, and we are at a good point to discuss this now.
Thank you. Do I see or I don't see? I have the light. Yes, Mari, over there, and then Ute in front.
Ivan Maric from Croatia. Always nice, astonished to see big countries come with huge numbers in millions of euros. My question is basically related how on national level you will control, or which mechanism you will use to control that the money is spent for the purpose of building national open science and helping to build European open science. Are you thinking about having established strong links that not just on national level you will monitor and control if some instrument that is bought on a research institute is really open and produce fair data? Is it something that you will put in call? Does your current traditional mechanism of reviewing of the projects and infrastructure will be changed in the future? And how this, on the other side, will be connected to EOSC monitoring? And how two of these, national and pan-European, will meet?
Excellent question. Please, Andrea.
Yeah, since I have the microphone, I start answering. I mean, EOSC is a federation, and it's a federation of efforts as well. So this is, I think, if we create a national network, then this the main task is now linking the national network with the European network. In our calculations, we took a lower approach on the lower level and have included the earmarked funding, the specific EOSC NFDI, I put this together because I see this bracket in the federation. And we calculated that, but of course there are broader, broader efforts on the national level that pay into the European aspects as well. So federation is my key answer.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. Well, in the case of Czech Republic, we're basically going to channel money through a series of calls within the operational program to raise the cohesion policy instrument. So I already mentioned that the first call has been launched, these are not going to be just regular calls. The criteria will of course address the needs that are defined by this overarching national coordination board. So basically, we are approaching these calls through the coordination board, which gathers all the relevant stakeholders in the system, and if they put a thumb up, then the project proposal might be submitted for the call. So before the project is submitted, there is supposed to be an overall consensus at the national level, because there will always be only a couple of institutions behind those projects, but we need to make sure that all the relevant stakeholders are on the same page on the board. When it comes to monitoring, well, of course, in the phase of building the data infrastructure through these calls, it's going to be the monitoring will be ex ante before the project proposal is submitted. Of course, there will be some expert evaluation when the project proposal is submitted, and of course when the national data infrastructure is established, is operating, we will have to come up with some robust and complex procedure to cover all the different aspects and components. So it's something that we still need to develop in the years to come, but of course we will have to focus on this particular issue to ensure that we are federated in the right way into pan-European EOSC, and that we are applying the right set of standards at the national level.
So I'm talking now on behalf of the Research Council of Norway, partly. In Norway, we have had for several years government policies mandating open access and fair data. But recently, so this, I just brought out a small portion of this study that we were doing. The main delivery was recommendations on how to fund and organize infrastructures. And the result of that is the Research Council has already for many years had funding for individual or institutional e-infrastructures that should be working towards open access. And what we are doing now is to sort of tighten the grip and say we need to point out some of these and say you are dedicated as a national infrastructure, and to make sure that they do not have to compete for their funding like every 3 years, like the institutional ones have to. So we want to raise the number of infrastructures that actually have long-term funding, and to be sure that they work towards the European level.
So if I understand Ivan's question correctly, so we promise we invest 10 million here, and then how do we make sure that this really goes to EOS and not somewhere else? That's, of course, a tricky question. It depends also, if we have an open science budget, it's kind of straightforward. That's open science, right? That's EOS relevant. If we have like our infrastructure, EOS relevant infrastructures, this has to be explained in the proposal, but then how do we control afterwards that it really goes into EOSC. So we follow these projects closely, but we don't have a precise mechanism to say, okay, this is really so and so many percent then are really EOSC relevant there. But as this is a number of projects, we can still follow each of them. We can put pressure and say, well, you promised to do this and this for EOSC, and how is your implementation then on the European level for EOSC? But I fully agree. It's one thing to write this in a call and say, well, you have to propose something, do something for EOSC, and then the consortium writes, we are doing that. And another thing is to follow up on that.
Yes, so let's move to the next.
Yeah, so all your countries have committed to ERA action number 1. What does that mean in practice? Is this it, so to speak, what you have presented, or will there be additional either investments or additional activities in policy making? How does that materialize now, this commitment?
I thought is this not public, what we answered to or it's not yet public, what we answered there? Because there was, of course, the question by the European Commission then, so what do you actually do? And then you had to list actions there, so.
And the question is it more than you have presented now? Is there something in addition to that, or was that it, so to speak?
No, but I mean, the ERA actions call also for additional investment and for additional activities. You had to put a ballpark number there, and the idea was that this ballpark number is higher than what you do so far. So I don't know what my colleagues have done there.
Was not yet on the.
No, this was not yet, because I mean this was for 20 and 21.
Yeah, well, basically what I presented today is the Czech contribution to the EOSC implementation. In other words, also to their respective ERA action. Of course, there's much more work behind. There are a lot of people working in the trenches, but basically, yeah, in a nutshell, that's the contribution.
Please.
Yeah, okay, I think that nobody will disagree that these things that you have say here that you contributed are not extremely strategically relevant and a good thing to do, but might you not, like somebody, like for example the EOSC Task Force for Financial Sustainability would say that what you're actually doing is you're taking your very good national initiatives and simply rebranding them and calling them EOSC contribution.
Andrea?
Answer.
Yeah, well, I made it quite explicit that we started at the same time, and so the point is really how much does what we do on a national level correspond to what we do for the European level. I come back to my idea of federation. If it really feeds in to what is happening on the within EOSC, if what we do nationally, if this is becomes part of the huge EOSC federation, then it is relevant and it is a good contribution. This is how I understand it. And coming back to Ute's question, what is also included in ERA Action 1, and which I didn't refer to now, is of course the whole part of open access. And so there we put some additional figures in. This was a discussion we had in the steering board or the monitoring group as well, whether how we should deal with this as well. And we so ERA Action 1 is broader than what I reported today.
Yeah, and the same goes for Norway. We do lots on the open access side and other areas of it. But my comment to you was, does it really matter if we get the work done? It's well, yeah. That all depends. I think this is the first time I've really heard fairly concrete descriptions of what we want to achieve by EOSC. So it's starting to make sense. Where everything seemed like a big cloud, also mentally, it's really getting to be more clear now, and it seems sensible. I think that's really beginning to be something.
Yeah, I want to give also a short answer. Yes, nice comments from Ivan and from you. And I also think it's a nice answer, who cares about rebranding? No. I think it's important that investment that of course exists, because all the research process includes dealing with the data one way or the other. All the research infrastructures have a sizable share of their operational budget that is concerned with the data and providing the data to the users and making from remote the data analyzable and etc. Now, if this becomes an integrated system that would allow not only the local effort to be limited, addressed to the local users, but it becomes the European, in the future, a global system for science, the same investment plus something reoriented in that direction makes a lot of sense. Now, when I made the case of Italy, I said it was very important that early in 2022, we had this law on the open science that is rather detailed on the data, but also on the publication and the training, all the other aspects, but let's talk about just the data. Before we started collecting and analyzing the proposals for the recovery plan, for example. So it's already a rule that has been taken in by those writing a proposal. So all the data part of those activities have to comply, have to be organized in view of the EOSC. And then you can say that this is an investment that goes in that direction, although it is not a budget line that is called EOSC and that is on top of the rest. So I think the system is carbureting somehow with, from different directions.
Yeah. You know,
Please,
I wanted to
Andy.
make, well, I had some question. First of all, I think it does matter, because if you don't have the same open data policy across all these countries, then you can be branding something EOSC, which means something different in every country. So I was going to ask Andrea, is there a plan in Germany to have open data policies for the NFDI projects? Because the ones that I'm involved with, they don't have open data yet. It's not mandatory. So I was wondering, is there going to be a change in that policy to still call that EOSC?
Difficult question. I mean, it's you are right that there is no overarching open science policy at this time, and it's not not part of the NFDI agenda in the next few days. The cooperation with EOSC is an important part, so this is part of the work that we want to do. But I think the concept of EOSC is broader in a way than what we do with NFDI. At least if I take the word open science, yeah, as we define it in a broader sense. NFDI is a bit more narrow, but there is certainly a bit of work that we could do.
Volker?
Yes, of course, in this discussion, the 101 answer is, of course, no matter how we get the Web of Fair Research data and services is good. The second answer is, of course, for running the core and exchange and so on, we will need some dedicated investment, right? And it has also to come then probably somehow from the member states. But right now we have a co-program partnership. And the same question we have, of course, for us, what is the next step? Are we willing, are we able to reserve some funding which directly goes which is earmarked and which directly goes into EOSC, is of course a similar question we have also for the research performing organizations. Are you willing to dedicate some permanent positions for this type of transverse actions? And so this is a question which is in the room, right? And we have to see how we go to the FP10 then after 27, and what is the model for us to do that? And I think that's a valid question, but it's not only a question for the member states, it's a question also for the research performing organizations.
Yeah, well, concerning the question on rebranding, I believe that it doesn't have a simple answer, because well, we saw that nearly all the countries are earmarking some particle budget for the EOSC implementation. But on the other hand, we have to realize that EOSC is also partially stemming from already ongoing activities, so there will always be an overlap. And even though if you inject a significant pile of money top down to build the data infrastructure, to foster education and training, it has to be, the EOSC idea has to be embedded in a mindset of each scientist, each researcher. So of course there will be much more money coming in the EOSC idea implementation at the institution level of the universities, research institutes, because they will have to switch to a new approach how to handle the scientific data. So of course, well, in Czechia, those 120 million euro, these are extra money, fresh money. But of course, well, they are on the top of everything we are already covering, but at the same time, we expect that the research organizations and universities will invest through their institutional budgets to advance EOSC implementation from really the lowest level, so that it's a part of the scientific culture in each and every organization.
I think maybe the reason I answered the way I did was that Norway is a fairly small country, and we have been working fairly well aligned for a long time. So I think whether we rebrand or not doesn't change the direction so much. But somebody said yesterday that it's all about semantics. And I think that's quite true also, that I'm not sure whether we in all aspects want to rebrand to say EOSC, but at least we want to rebrand to say fair data, European cooperation, good science, maybe use other words, and that we from the policy level know that if we do this, then it will end up supporting EOSC.
Thank you. Last question from the audience.
Yes, hello. My name is Eleni Toli, Athena Research Center in Greece. I have a brief comment. I was impressed by the very structured approach of the Czech Republic in relation to open science and activities and EOSC. And then continuing this discussion, how we label things, I would like to flip the coin and ask you, okay, did EOSC help you? What kind of impact did EOSC have in your countries in relation to the activities you have presented? You presented a number of activities that are aligned with EOSC, or we try to call them EOSC activities. If we see it from the other side, from the other perspective, have you been encouraged by the EOSC establishment process to do these things? Have you increased your efforts in this direction? Or is this process irrelevant for you and these are two totally different things? You would anyway work on open science aspects or related infrastructures in your countries, whether there is EOSC or not?
Thank you for this question. I think the answer is that, of course, EOSC is helping to creating an order parameter in a system that, of course, had these needs. We are not discovering the need of openness of the data, but we're aiming at making a system that works. And let me introduce another small aspect so I can address a question also directly to Lukáš. You presented something interesting that is a national initiative, so EOSC CZ, so a establishment of EOSC at the country level to be ready to contribute, to be federated, and etc. And this is an interesting thing. But let me ask you the following. At the level of the European Commission, some investment is starting, a part of all the projects, to be done via procurement. So there is procurement of a prototype of a middleware that will be there. It's European citizens, taxpayers' money, and it might help in designing some architecture from the beginning that is compatible with that prototype. As a prototype, maybe after 3 or 4 years will be replaced by something better. But my question is, are you, in your case, and all the other colleagues in their countries, considering that things that can be done at the level of our common participation to European things may feed back at national level technically and strategically?
Definitely they do. Definitely they do. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. Well, coming back to your question, and I will touch also your question, Giorgio. Well, of course, the open scientific data, it's another stage of the open science policy approach in Europe. So it would emerge even without the EOSC is a high-level political initiative launched a couple of years ago. But of course, since we have a brand EOSC, it provides a major political push top-down, and it stimulates and incentivizes the country to do much more. So it meets somewhere in the middle, I believe. Well, of course, that all the achievements that are and will be made at the European level, they should serve as something that the national governments and the member states and all the European countries should uptake. Well, for example, in Czechia, we really intend to follow the political architectural, but also technical design that will allow us to federate the national component within the pan-European data infrastructure. It goes without saying.
So I would say from the Norwegian perspective that we would definitely be working on open access anyway. But I believe that what EOSC has done is to bring together discipline-specific groups that have been working across Europe or internationally for many years with more generic groups that have been working only, or generic infrastructures that have been working only nationally. Suddenly, having the EOSC and seeing that we need to work together on a European level, we get all those groups to talk together in definitely a new way.
So I would also say EOSC helps us to structure in our country. Open access was there before, right? So that's not really the topic. But using infrastructures across different organizations, that's really something where the EOSC helps us to thinking, okay, what do we have to do in order to share data and services and infrastructures? So and there we use the EOSC model or the EOSC vision as a structuring element. So I think it's very helpful there.
Yeah, my comment would be from the very beginning, EOSC has been, or the EOSC development has been a catalyst also of the German development, so that there is a strong link. The challenge is to establish this again and again, because things are moving in both in the European and in the national field, and this has to be kept together and made possible so that we avoid a duplication of efforts. And this is a continuing challenge, but it's also, of course, EOSC is a chance because, well, open science doesn't stop at national boundaries.
Yes, thank you very much. I think I would like just to make one comment to conclude that EOSC gives us the chance to have a critical mass. To have a critical mass system in research data will be a big achievement for many reasons, for freedom, for not becoming a chapter of a purely commercial operation run somewhere else outside Europe, and for strengthening the assets of European research that is important, rich, diversified, full of curiosity and potential, but that I think needs a strong glue in order to perform in the years to come. So I would like to thank all the panel and all the audience for this session that turned out to be interesting. So thanks a lot to all.